Welcome, everyone. We're going to be recording this session. So we also want to let you know that if you have any questions during this presentation, please add them to the Q&A panel, and we'll do our best to answer the questions as we go along if time allows. Otherwise, we'll answer them during the Q&A session at the end. For today's webinar, we have Stephen Smith, Senior Director, Strategic Industries from Salesforce, joining us. And as part of the Diabsolut team, we have Drew Trammell, our Director of Sales, Naeem Khalid, Vice President of Professional Services, Derek Koyama, who is the Senior Director of Professional Services, and Stephen Sugamar, who's our Principal Solutions Consultant. We're going to talk a little bit about Diabsolut. We're going to have Stephen present the Salesforce point of view. We'll also talk about leveraging Salesforce Field Service, and then present you with a vegetation management demo, and then open up the Q&A session. So I'll pass it on to Drew, who's our Director of Sales.
Thanks, Erica. Good afternoon, folks. We really appreciate you joining us today. I'd like to dive a little deeper into, it never fails. Sorry about that. I'd like to dive a little deeper into Diabsolut and who we really are. We were established in 2003 as one of the top click partners in the world, and we really have offices across the globe. We offer innovative end-to-end customer service and asset-centric solutions to address the business needs of all organizations across many industries worldwide. As you can see here, we have a significant list of customers. They range from large to mid-size to small. Really, our core expertise is in all things Salesforce, with the core competency in field service, along with other areas of expertise such as call center, customer experience, sales, financials, and project management. As I mentioned earlier, we have a broad range of global clients, which allows us to be fluent in your business language and really gives us a unique point of view. We really work closely with all our customers to ensure they achieve success and deliver exceptional service by giving them the best tools for the job. Transforming organizations has been the cornerstone of our business for over 15 years. We have a deep understanding of the challenges in the field, along with solutions required to meet all of our customers' needs. And I really want to let you know that all the folks that we have on our team, from executives to our sales staff to our engineers and pre-sales, they all come from the industries that we serve. So we're able to give that deeper point of view. We maximize customer value by enabling and working with all the people involved in the business process, from the C-suite to the technicians in the field. We find that our most successful projects are the ones that include the input and the needs from really all levels of the organization. This ensures that any new solution will be adopted and utilized by everyone. And I want to stress that, right? One of the key differentiators we have is we like to have everybody involved, right? And by doing this, not just having executives, not just having the IT team or business, but also having the folks that are actually utilizing the solution, that helps with adoption, because you can have the best, the best and most expensive solution out there. If it's not being used, it's not really worth anything. Next slide, please. Partnering with Salesforce and other partners in the Salesforce ecosystem is one of the keys to our success. Partnering with the right partners allows us to deliver full stack solutions that are world-class and all on the same platform, and allows us to provide deep capabilities around operationalizing asset data and integration of IoT and GIS workflow. Partnering enables us to deliver the best field service solutions on the best platform and tailor the solutions exactly to our customers' needs. For our customers, partnering with these great partners takes what used to be customization on click and deep programming, and provides very deep capabilities out of the box. Now I'd like to pass it over to Steve at Salesforce to give his deep point of view. Steve?
Thanks, Drew. Appreciate that. Just to kind of expand on my role at Salesforce, much like my role at Click Software for 20 some odd years, I work heavily with our customers, analysts, Gartner's Magic Quadrant, etc. I work in the product group, so I help align product to the direction of key industries. Utilities being one of the biggest focal points, certainly the biggest focal point for me over the past several years. And then I also co-sponsor our utilities user group with a lovely person, Stana Hedden, who's 30 plus years in the utility before joining Click and Salesforce. As mentioned, I'm ex-Click and I had the pleasure of working with Diabsolut for about 15 years. So very happy to be here. There's a lot of acceleration around the challenges, plus a deep desire, if not acceptance, and even an expectation of the use of technology to drive change across utility field service going on right now. So digitalization is part of the common language now, when probably just a few years ago, you'd probably hear a little scattering of that, a thought of that, and maybe a little bit of interest within the C-suite of utilities. Much deeper now. So in the next 10 minutes, I hope to share some of the key challenges driving change. I want to point out a few key trends in mobile field service management solutions that can help identify where things are headed, right? And then lastly, I'll project a bit of where I think things are going, driven by these challenges and the trends along the way. Hopefully, from these insights, you get some awareness of what's going on. You can look at your own solutions, your own processes in this light, and hopefully get some benefit out of it. So first slide. First, let's kind of start with some of the key challenges. Not a comprehensive list. I just picking on a few key challenges that I continually hear across the mobile field service management space, and especially in the utility space. So the first point, you probably heard the terms CX, EX, customer experience, customer expectation, employee experience, employee expectation. There's a huge focus in this space. My view on this, and I think it's common across anybody that kind of studies this space, it aligns heavily with consumer expectations, right? We all have our smartphones. We all have our experiences that we've had in the consumer space. We're bringing all that information, that detail, those experiences into our corporate and business systems, right? So now all stakeholders related to those business systems are throwing the applications that they use within the business on the same scale as their experience with consumer applications, right? So it's a pretty high bar to meet. In fact, over my time, I speak to a lot of organizations across the globe. Again, lots of different industries, but heavily on the utility side. I've heard a lot of these almost cliche phrases. Probably the most common of these is Uber-like. Although I've recently run into, probably about a couple of years ago, a different flavor of Uber-like. So you often think of Uber-like as that customer engagement approach where you can see the resources, you can make selections of who you want to come and pick you up and what type of vehicle, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You could also have an Uber experience where you're getting graded and you're getting some feedback and ability to feedback to the service provider. But I've also heard this same phrase used in the context of removing those artificial barriers that many service organizations put in place, really just to ease or hasten the scheduling process, right? Picking the right person, the right crew, the right piece of equipment at the right time to be in the right place, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But rather than an engagement process for Uber-like, now looking to kind of break the barriers, much like you get with Uber, it's gonna pick and offer up the right resources depending on their skills, tools, parts, certifications, all those details that you have in place. This customer experience, right? I think along the way, the Uber-like idea, the need, it's really around improving utilization of the personnel, while also increasing the customer engagement, the customer experience along the way. The next common thing that I hear is Google Fast, right? So I had an experience with a very, very large field service organization, lots of field resources, equipment, crews, third-party contracted resources. The manager at that point was astute enough to know, and they had the experience from their consumer lives. They knew that it was essential to deliver an exceptional user experience as well as the results. And the first thing that came into their mind as we're having the conversation of what is the target? What are you looking, where are you looking to bring this thing? The first thing that came into their mind was, I want this solution Google Fast. It's gotta meet the expectations of our end users, both in speed of performance and the results that are delivered. Another key term I often hear is iPhone easy. So the idea that, hey, I can pick up an iPhone, I can pretty much start using it. Things are intuitive, things are in the right context. And so I often hear this in that context, right? Our users are expecting an individualized experience using your application. We need to have everything in the context. And if you're telling me it's going to take months to train these guys, I have to retrain them periodically. Maybe this isn't the right solution for us. So a lot of these kind of cliche terms, but really a common theme here, right? A lot of organizations are using technology as that catalyst to help engage the users, the end customers, but also using technology as that catalyst to attract and retain talent. So certainly, probably about 6 or 7 years ago, I met with a high-level individual at PG&E, and they were building a business unit focused wholly on bringing technology into the business to engage and retain talent. And they knew if they were able to do that, the end customer was going to achieve the benefits out of this, the operational excellence that they were looking for. So I actually built a business unit that entirely focused on bringing technology and engaging the end users to adapt and adjust the technology to meet ongoing changes and ongoing needs. They were quite successful in that. And now you see it popping up in a lot of different organizations, right? All in all, that first CX/EX point, certainly a tremendous shift across utilities to focus on the user and the consumer. Customer success officers, they've been happening a lot in the utility space. But I gotta say, it seems that the user experience is something that's even more upfront. In my mind, that's good news for all of us. The second bullet point that's already up there, a tremendous focus on consolidating systems in mobile field service management. Digitalization is certainly part of that discussion point, and looking to streamline the entire process for whatever systems are interacting with mobile field service management. But it's pretty obvious why that's the case. There's a lot of benefits when you consolidate systems. You're reducing your operating costs, but you're also improving your operational awareness, your ability to make very good decisions for the planned as well as the reactive work. If you've got a single view of everything that's going on, all your field resources, all your third-party contracted resources, all the jobs, the disposition of all, the plan in the future, as well as what's happened in the past. So it's a key thing. However, I think some kind of miss out when you try to consolidate. It's not a simple process of simply throwing all those resources and all that work in the same mobile field service management solution. There's a few key things that you got to keep an eye on. It certainly demands the ability to localize, if not even individualize, as mentioned before, with the employee experience side of things. There's a lot of variance across scheduling criteria, dispatch policies, the flows that occur behind the scenes to ensure consistent adherence to process across the business. There's a lot of contextual need, as mentioned before, to help engage resources and users, but also to enforce adherence to process along the way and ease the training requirements, as noted before. So without that, certainly without that support of variability, there's going to be some problems. You're not going to achieve the benefits. Certainly the devil is in the details in a lot of this, because organizations are getting more precise in how they're doing things, what they're considering as part of the process. They're doing this because they understand, if I can get that precise, if I can get the speed to process that information and help me make better decisions, I'm going to get better benefits all along the way. And then again, regardless, you get that precise, you support the variability, the individual nature of an engagement, you're going to get user acceptance along the way. Certainly user acceptance on any technology is essential, critical, I should say, because if you don't get user acceptance, you won't get adoption and the solution will fail. Certainly lots of examples along that way. For sake of speed, I'll kind of speed things up a little bit here. One last point around this particular point, when you consolidate, that variability is key, but simply by the nature of field service, it also demands operational agility, right? And this is something that's getting more respected, almost top of list for most utilities that I'm speaking with. They're looking for solutions that allow you to adapt, adjust, refine, if not through a process of awareness, and then someone manually goes in, makes a decision, through that next stage in the process where the system itself will make adjustments all along the way to continually improve things. The next key point I wanted to point out on the challenges, regulatory demands, right? So this is something that came up during a utilities user group session that we held late in 2020. It also came out earlier in 2020 amongst a number of roundtable sessions that we held with utility executives. It seems much like what I've seen and others have seen in the oil field services space. Regulators aren't immune to those accelerating expectations as consumers, right? They want what they want, when they want it, where they want it, how they want it, in as much detail as possible. So out of those discussions with the utilities user group and the executive roundtable, questions were thrown out. Hey, are you guys seeing the same thing we're seeing from our regulators? They're now looking and exploring, they're not actually pressing for it as far as was mentioned, but they're looking for access to data, not just the reports of what was happening pre-event, during an event, post an event. They want access to their data. Again, the same thing happened in the oil field services space, which was not well prepared for this, right? They didn't have the precision, the detail, the confidence in the data sets within their systems to hand it over to a regulator, right? And until they were actually forced to, and these super majors spending ridiculous amounts of money to have third parties come in and periodically scrub their data, fill their data, produce these data sets that are then exposed directly to the regulator. So that was one thing that came up. I think those expectations are increasing, and I think the antidote is probably around getting more precise, more confident in your data. The last key point here, and again, this is not an exhaustive list, just probably kind of hitting the high points, shifting demographics, and oldie, but probably not so goodie. It's a continued issue from across the globe, that simple lack of available talent. So a couple of approaches I've seen occur across many organizations. One, as I mentioned before, using technology to attract and retain talent. It's no longer acceptable for the normal consumer, the employee of a utility, to deal with paper forms, entering in multiple systems, these types of things. It's a big turnoff. If they're looking to get into that space, they're looking to work with the latest and greatest technologies, to have that user interface, to have a say in what is presented and used within that interface. So that's one element of it. But there's also an element that's rising as the adoption of more technology is getting fostered. The use of technology to make the most of what available resources, what available talent you already have. So things like visual remote assist, things like knowledge base, sharing knowledge, collecting it. These are key things. And I think Steven Sugimar may be going through some of this a little bit later on as part of the demo, if not talking about it. But the shifting demographics, the aging workforce, still top of mind in most utilities I'm talking with. So here again, just a taste of the challenges driving change. It's certainly taken a lot of time to get to this point. And taking a look back, in my mind, there's really three key trends that are driving change and accelerating it very rapidly. One is mobile field service management solutions getting more precise, right? Being able to collect and leverage the detail throughout every stage in the process, key, so precision. The second is, and I mentioned it earlier, operational agility. There was a point in my 25 years of mobile field service management that organizations felt they would deploy solutions, work with them for 5, maybe 10 years, and then go to the next technology. It's no longer the case. Organizations, utilities especially, are looking for operational agility, the ability to adapt, adjust the solution to meet the specific needs, engaging employees, getting more benefits out of it, and then to different degrees, from awareness, hey, you need to change this, you're going to get these benefits, to hey, automatically change this thing. I should note, I also work in the comm space, and telecommunications companies for a long time now have been asking for a thing called zero touch field service management. So in this case, they say the system has all the detail, has awareness of what's going on a very local level. The system needs to automatically define the approach, the localized approach, the seasonal approach, the individual interactions, make those adjustments automatically and continually improve the system to get better benefits and better engagement for end users. So precision, agility, and the last key point is operational intelligence. So applying intelligence within the systems to help take advantage of that precision as well as operational agility. So those three things, again, I'd caution, keep an eye on those three things as you select solutions, as you deploy those solutions, because you don't want to deploy a solution in a way where you're going to impact your operational agility. Thanks. From here, I wanted to shift to the next slide, going from changes that are challenges, I should say, that are driving change to challenges that are impeding change. I think you need to keep a really sharp eye on this as you go through deployment of whatever solutions you select. It's critical to the success of that mobile field service management delivery. A number of the common legacies that I see limiting utilities in their ability to quickly adapt to meet those accelerating demands. Certainly there's a legacy around how it's been done, right? So, I can't tell you how many times, a lot of times, many service operations, they look as the technology almost as a commodity that, hey, okay, I'm going from this old technology to this newer technology, performance is going to increase, that's going to get me what I want. So let's take our historic approaches, our historic processes, and apply the new technology. This is a big miss in terms of leveraging that technology to make those huge benefits for the operation, as well as it has a high potential when you apply those old processes, those old approaches to a new solution, has a high likelihood to frustrate your users. They know you're not getting the best out of it. Hey, this is the same old process applied to just a new technology. The interface looks great, but we're still kind of doing the same things. We're still hitting the same potholes, the same hurdles we're having to go through. So that's one. Another one is the historic approach I've seen of looking at mobile field service management solutions as static systems, right? I think the audience probably all have worked in the field service space, so you know by nature, field service isn't static. I think the only constant certainly is change through that process. Things are happening all the time in different directions, and the system, the business needs to adapt and adjust along the way. So no longer, in my mind, I see a lot of discussion points about, okay, we want a relationship with the vendor for 25 years. We don't want a relationship for 5, 10 years now. It's 25 years, perhaps as long as we could possibly go, because we don't want to go through this process again and again. So, a big change in that area, even to the point of, in terms of static, I hear a lot of discussion around simple things like job duration, right? So when I asked an organization, okay, do you know how long it takes to do the job of your different types? The typical answer is no, not really, right? So applying this approach of continual improvement to a simple thing like job duration will help improve the plan. So it's going to be closer to reality. No plan is ever going to be reality. It's going to be closer to reality and thus require less administrative changes, less impacts to customers, less impacts to users along the way. So definitely keep an eye on that approach of continual improvement, looking for solutions that help inform you and so you can make the decisions, but also looking for the technology, the intelligence within the technology to apply continual improvement. Another key legacy that limits a lot of utilities is silos within their operations, right? So compartmentalizing the approach, the solution, not having this seamless interaction across business units, if you will, if not geographies, territories, et cetera. This silos the ability to get benefits out of the limited amount of resources you got. So breaking down those silos, as painful as it can be to have the discussion, because there's typically a lot of ownership felt in those silos, it's going to allow you to leverage solutions and get the benefits that you need, and certainly leverage the resources, those limited resources you got available across the business. Right? The last key point in terms of legacy, and it came up recently in a utilities user group session we had probably about 3 weeks ago, where it was focused on dispatchers and dispatcher job satisfaction, right? So as we boiled it out and kind of pulled in different directions, okay, what are the impacts to dispatchers? One key theme was coming out, which is our dispatchers are having to go to multiple systems to collaborate externally, internally, getting the permits they need, understanding what's going on, are the materials available, what's going on with this project or individual work order, work item, so they can make the right decisions. So, an awareness, a desire to build collaboration within that interface that allows you to bring in all the details. So a user, in this case, a dispatcher was the discussion point, has everything at their fingertips, all the awareness, so they can make appropriate decisions very, very quickly. Key to remove that burden of awareness. So, those dispatchers, all your personnel can apply their knowledge, their skills, and deliver the best results, right? Great. So again here, I think a mindset of continually improving is likely the biggest shift for most field service organizations, and something you should keep in mind. Don't kind of fall into that trap of letting the past limit your ability to progress into the future. Next slide. I think another key challenge along the way is this journey is one that is accelerating. It's not going to pause. It's not going to wait for people to catch up, right? There's a massively dramatic shift within field services, driven a lot by those first challenges that I mentioned before. Certainly a lot of difference amongst the 25 years ago when I first started, that's pushing organizations to make this move, to make this transformation, to focus on digitalization. Some of the proof points I've mentioned already, things like the dispatcher job satisfaction, that's something that hasn't come up a lot in field services, surprisingly. It would come up here and there, but now it's coming up much more often. Offline mobile GIS, right? Being able to leverage data awareness, the other systems at all stages in the process, right, is a key desire. Drone uses in utility, not something exceptionally new, but a lot of discussion, a lot of desire to adopt drone use in utilities in a lot of different processes, not just the inspection use case. Where, by the way, beyond line of sight, many service organizations and utilities are already preparing for having beyond line of sight available to them. I should note, as part of IDA, I think the president actually opened up utilities in that area to use their drones beyond line of sight. So it's kind of happening. It's probably going to happen much quicker, and utilities are preparing themselves for it. They're also preparing for the data onslaught that's coming as part of that process. Great. And then certainly that acceptance of technology, to me, it seems like an all-time high and accelerating even more. I'm getting asked questions from utilities that telecommunications companies, well known for adopting technology and mobile field service management solutions, haven't yet asked, right? So it's a pretty exciting time in terms of adopting technology. Collaboration, I've already mentioned. I'd also like to note here in the bottom, I took a little pain and I tried to aggregate a number of recent statements by different utilities that I'm interacting with, all focused on what they are looking for in mobile field service management solution. Paraphrase, certainly they're no longer satisfied with point solutions with limited ability to localize their approaches, to individualize that experience, and they're looking for a support of continual innovation through that process, right? So they don't want a 5-10-year relationship with a vendor. They want a relationship way out into the future. And they're looking for that relationship to go well beyond what has historically been understood. And so capitalization gets into the discussion, but they're looking for a consolidation of everything, right? The long, the mid, the short cycle work, your employees, your crews, the equipment, materials, third-party contractors, all within a single solution that allows them to really engage their stakeholders, which gets that adoption by supporting improved efficiency, effectiveness, and safety. Right. Before I pass over to the next speaker, just a quick word of advice and recap. I'd say precision, agility, intelligence. Keep an eye on those things as you move forward with new solutions. It's going to be the answer, the thing that counters those challenges to driving change. I'd say engage your stakeholders. This is going to help, ease, and nothing's perfect. It's not going to actually get away from all those challenges to change, but it's going to greatly ease that process. And then I'd say ensure your solutions and expectations around the solutions foster continual improvement. This will help keep your users, other stakeholders fully engaged, while also helping to future-proof your field services and your field services approach with the solutions that you've selected. Great. With that said, thanks again for your time, and I will pass to Derek.
Sure, thanks, Steve. Just in the interest of time, well, I'll go over a few of these key points, myself and Naeem. This is a kind of a high-level summary, I guess you could call it. 3 big things that we're seeing in the field, specifically with respect to veg management. I'll talk about the first one. I'll ask Naeem to talk about optimization and flexibility, and we'll get to the meat of the demo very, very quickly. So from a planning your vegetation management, in general, what we're seeing is planning your veg management is now table stakes in the utility field, right? Planning it, doing it. You know, if you're not doing it, you're far behind and you should be doing it. It is a regulatory requirement. What we're seeing now more and more across the industry is adding in portions on top of that veg management. So it's tracking the completion, prioritizing that work. How do you report that work to customers, regulatory boards, state, provincial, federal, and what type of platform do you have in place to be able to do those communications regularly? You know, you see that very clearly in some of the PG&E story around reporting, and with it, you know, veg management is going to get just more and more important as climate change occurs, and it's getting worse. When you look at traditional field service, you know, we're generally dispatching to street addresses. What we're seeing in the industry now, unique, well, it's not necessarily unique to veg management or across all of types of work. It is now you're starting to dispatch to a length of road, a specific tree, a network asset, a user-generated polygon, which could be you know, a farm tap in the middle of a field, etc. So we're seeing a lot of customers utilizing technology like the Salesforce Maps, combined with the field service management solution, such as SFS, to really bring those 2 pieces together of, hey, now I'm dispatching to a lat long or to an area or to a group of areas, as well as now I have the capability to report and communicate out to customers and federal agencies if need be. Naeem, if you want to talk about optimization and flexibility.
Cool. Thank you very much, Derek. Yeah, so as kind of Derek mentioned, once we kind of get through the planning, the vegetation management, and generating the work, it's really a question of how do we schedule this work in, and how do we build the optimal schedule for our resources? How do we ensure that we're finding that right balance between all the different types of work that our utility or our vegetation management has to deal with? So whether that's urgent work that's coming in or routine work that has to be scheduled. We want to make sure that as our resources move around their territories, as they're driving past different areas, they're not driving past potential jobs that could be done within their route. And this is where Salesforce Field Service kind of comes into its own. The ability to kind of take a whole variety of parameters, such as the priority, the geography, duration, the tools and skills required, combine that with the different business KPIs that drive business metrics, and create a schedule that prioritizes the right work but ensures that vegetation management is not forgotten. Especially when it becomes important is as time goes on, as schedules evolve, having that flexibility built into the schedule and being able to change on the fly. So being able to kind of optimize your schedules as in-day changes happen, as different events happen, is a key kind of part of building a solid optimization strategy that's going to help optimize the schedule. This also combines with the flexibility in the field. So, you know, as Derek mentioned, the PG&E example, the ability to kind of capture the work that's been completed, capture information about what was done, take pictures, has become not just kind of a nice to have, but a regulatory and compliance essential requirement. So we're talking about information not just to capture pictures, but also to capture the accurate coordinates of where the work was done, describe the work that was done, and then be able to file that information and store it in an archive so that's available for future. So not just be able to kind of say, hey, I've done the work, but also if there's a regulatory requirement and they need to kind of understand what work was done, that you can search through a system in a systematic way and find out that information and present it to different regulatory bodies. And while we'd like to say that the proactive planning can help us kind of capture all the work that we need to do, there's also one vital resource that utilities have that we really have to utilize, and that's the field worker. So being able to give the field worker the right tools as they're out there in the field to be the eyes and ears of that modern utility. So giving them the ability to capture information, capturing new requests as they drive past an area, maybe they see vegetation encroaching on power lines or on equipment, and the ability to quickly generate work, potentially complete the work themselves, or call out the right team with the right tools to execute that work. Next slide, please. So I'm going to kind of have Stephen in a few seconds and just kind of let him run through a few different demo pieces. So we're going to walk through three kind of parts of the process, and these are just three different ways of doing different things rather than being the complete and the only solutions. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we can create work using Salesforce Maps. We're going to talk about different ways of scheduling work and finding the right resources. And then we're going to go through a demo of flexibility in the field and allowing technicians to raise work and capture completion information. So Stephen, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Naeem, and good day, everyone. Thank you for coming to our webinar. Let me just get my screen up and running here. Wonderful, and I believe you guys can see, so I'll just get right into it. So firstly, we're looking at Salesforce Maps and how maybe some back-end users, whether that's a manager, a foreman, a supervisor, or even dispatchers, can actually use a visual map interface to create work in and around tree trimming. You'll see that I have two layers currently active. I have my utility poles and lines, and I also have my tree trimming work orders. You can see that there are currently 0 work orders. Now, these layers, they can come from a multitude of sources. They can come directly from Salesforce records, that being the asset in this case, and they can also come from external GIS systems through GIS layers as well. You can see my layers are right here, so we're just going to zoom the map to fit the data. And here we can see some of our asset lines and poles plotted out. I'm just going to click on this one. That's going to give us our tooltip information around utility pole number 1. We could see this is purely marked through lat long coordinates, and we can see some of the other information such as availability, reliability, serial number, so on and so forth. Now we can imagine if we're a dispatcher and we have some GIS data, we might be using some of that data. So I'm going to change my map type here from a street view more to represent imagery using Esri layers. And now we can kind of see some of the growth in the trees in and around our utility poles. And perhaps now as a dispatcher with using some most recent data, we can see near this freeway that, okay, I have some growth. Let me go ahead and create a work order. Now we can do this in a multiple number of ways, but for today's presentation, we're going to use polygons. We're going to use this tool here to draw a polygon. And I'm just going to go ahead, draw my box here, connect it, and this is going to create us a new boundary. Now within the boundary, we can do a multitude of steps, take actions, update fields, move things around, or get some visibility. Here, we're going to right click, we're going to do a mass action, and we're going to update a field on my asset here. So right now the system is pulling up my layer. It's going to allow me to select a field, and here I want to go to create tree trimming work order, and we're going to set that value to true. We're going to save and close, and now the system is going to run its automation to create the relevant work order along with its relevant work order line items to represent the 5 assets we have here. Now that's been done, so we're going to now refresh my tree trimming work order layer, and we're actually going to see a work order has now appeared at one of my asset locations. By giving that a click, and again, we could see our tooltip information once again. Again, taking the lat long directly from the asset and setting this as the address or the location of the work order. We can see here it is a work type tree trimming, and we also have a scheduling priority 4. This is very important for optimization and some of the items that Naeem had discussed about in relevance to when does tree trimming become the most important job. Clearly, we can wait a couple of days, weeks, perhaps, but through a dynamic priority allocation, we would see how this would increase and eventually become an urgent matter. Next thing we would want to look at is the related list. Here, we can see a number of work order line items, and we can see how each one is matched out to a different utility pole. There are 5 poles here, and so the work order is referencing the master or the parent, whereas each work order line item will give visibility into the other assets. This might be important for field technicians to view this information out in the field. So aggregating and combining all of the assets is crucial. And at the bottom, we can see how we do require a skill in and around tree trimming. So this is a way in which dispatchers or any relevant users can use visual maps to create work orders. Now moving on, we're going to see how I can act as a contracting company and a utilities company can give me that work that represents vegetation management or tree trimming. Switching my tab here, we can see perhaps I am working for the company Cirrus. I am a contractor, and we can see that this is the contractor view. Firstly, note that I only see 3 jobs. These are some jobs I was testing with earlier this week, but this is the job that just came into the system. We could see its current status is none. We could see the 3 members that work for our contracting company. So using Salesforce Field Service and one of their contractor SKUs, we are able, as the utility company, to provide this functionality of scheduling and dispatch to our contractors as well. Now to talk a little bit about optimization, we're going to see a semi-automatic way of scheduling this work as a contractor. Firstly, I'm going to grab my appointment or my work here. This is defined as tree trimming, and we're going to go ahead with candidates. Now, again, I'm just asking the system to help me out. Hey, who has the availability? Who has the necessary skill sets? If we wanted to account for tools and material, type of equipment, type of truck as well, that can all be incorporated as part of the optimization logic. Here we can see that the system has recommended us 2 resources and some various times. If I click on Xavier, we could see that we have different slots available. For example, right now, the earliest we can start is 10:18 a.m. or 12:30, 9, so on and so forth. So I'm going to take this afternoon slot for today's date of October 5th. So we're just going to hit on schedule. And then the system is going to go ahead and make that assignment of giving this job to Xavier. He's now going to be notified on his mobile device, and he'll have all the relevant details to fulfill this tree trimming activity. So this is just a way how Salesforce Field Service allows utility companies to work with other contractors using the same solution set. This allows for a streamlined and consistent functionality and business workflows. Now, for our last use case, we're going to take a look at the perspective of the field technician. I'm going to open up my iPad here, and I'm just going to open up Field Service. And right now, I am working as Alan Reed. He's actually working for the utilities company themselves. And so we're going to be acting as an internal employee as opposed to a contractor. First thing you can note very quickly about the Field Service mobile app, you can see down there, I'm in Montreal, represented by the blue dot, and we can already see the location of our tree trimming work order up north, in and around an hour away. So I will go ahead and click on this tree trimming work. And the first thing I want to do is go ahead for the completion. So we can imagine we're going to go through our status transitions. We're going to log all our necessary details there. But for this presentation, we just want to focus on completion. So we're going to go with my actions, and I've created a specific form called tree trimming completion. A very simple form asking all of the crucial details while capturing all of the necessary details for auditory, regulatory purposes, or whatever else that might be. Going through a couple of questions here. The vegetation was cleared around the assets. All felled trees were cleared. Branches and leaves were cleared. The tree stumps were ground down, and all hazards and equipment was cleared after the work was finished. Here, we allow the technician to enter some free text comments. And lastly, and perhaps most importantly as well, is we would want to capture some pictures. We can use our device camera, whether we're on an iPad, a smartphone, whatever that might be, or select pictures from our gallery. Just to make this a little bit more interesting, we're going to go ahead and select something from this gallery. And you can imagine this is the end or the result of our work after the tree trimming has been performed. We're just going to capture that image, attach it as part of the work order, and give that a save. Now, all of this detail is available on the work order, and using system logic, we can actually take some of that information, such as the files, the pictures, and add them to the asset, or actually transpose them to other systems for record keeping. That's the beauty of the Salesforce platform. Now, looking at it from the technician's perspective, we just seen how they can go ahead and complete tree trimming work that may have been assigned to them. But we can imagine sometimes as we're driving to our various job sites, locations, we might actually see some overgrowth, a fallen tree, some other vegetation management experiences. So we would like to create a work order out in the field. We want to raise this and bring it to the attention of our supervisor, of our foreman, of our back office so that they can take necessary action. For this, I'm just going to back out here to my main page, and we're going to go ahead with what we call a global action to create tree trimming work. Now, just a couple of things for the technician to pick up. Not necessary, but if you would like to, if he actually parked on the side of the road, he got out and he wanted to view the asset ID or the asset serial number, he can grab that and take a look, and perhaps he is posting this for utility pole number 1. Same thing for work type. You can imagine, we might have some vegetation management, tree trimming, pruning, things like this. For this presentation, we'll just go ahead with tree trimming. The location as well, if he actually decided to get out of his car and to scan the location ID of the asset, he can do so, representing UP number 1. Lastly, just for the description, we put a pretext here, a prefix, and all the technician has to write is some notes. A lot of overgrowth around the lines, for example. And lastly, just a field there for data purposes. We want to understand where are work orders coming from. Are they coming from map creation through dispatchers? Are they coming from the field? Are they coming from preset maintenance schedules? So just to get some quality data so we can run some further reporting. Now, last thing I want to say about this in terms of the location, we don't always expect the technician to stop on the side of the road, to get out and to grab all these details. There are some actions and processes that we can take to automatically capture the location of the technician when he submitted that request, making this very easy for the technician and requiring him to input less data. So we'll give this a save, and that is going to go ahead and a new work order would be created. Now this can go out to the dispatcher to review and assign. This can go out to the contractor if that's how we have business workflow set up. Or we can even have this be completed by the technician themselves. There are a number of ways to run a business workflow in creating work and then self-assigning that as well. I just do want to thank you for your time. That was the end of the presentation, and we're going to hand this back to Erica. Thank you all.
Thank you, Stephen, for that demo. It was very informative. If anybody has any questions, we can open up the Q&A forum. You can input the questions into the Q&A chat. If anybody has any questions that they want to take offline, you can always reach out to us. There's a contact information that will be sent out after the webinar is over. You'll get a confirmation email with where to reach us. Jeremy, I'm not sure if you were handling the Q&A panel.
Yeah, there's a number of questions, and I know that we're bumping up against time. This might be a question for Stephen Sugarmar. The question is, can I create various or multiple tree trimmings work on a reoccurring schedule?
Yes, of course. Thank you for the question. Great question. So there are multiple ways to do that. I would say the best practice is to leverage something called maintenance plans within the Salesforce Field Service solution. Maintenance plans allows you to tie a sort of reoccurring schedule to an asset or multiple assets in which work would be automatically created and ready for scheduling based upon that maintenance plan. A lot of detail can go into it. For example, first we might need to do some pruning, then we need to do some tree trimming, and then finally a tree fell. So there is a lot of flexibility in terms of the type of work we want to do as part of that plan as well. Hope that answers the question.
Thanks, Stephen. Common question, actually there's two questions about this. Just to summarize, any best practices to drive user adoption? Maybe
Sure,
Naeem or Derek, if you want to jump on that one.
I can take that one. Yeah, so I think a couple of kind of things we already touched on. So then being proactive in the nature is definitely kind of helps. Definitely not having to deal with emergencies, not having to deal with urgent situations, and being able to plan out your vegetation management is definitely becoming a key kind of trend within the industry we're seeing. The other part of it is flexibility. So we saw kind of Stephen demoing different types of information capture in the field, the ability to capture pictures. And Steve kind of touched upon that this morning as well, earlier in the presentation about customer experience and user experience. So it's kind of key to having a process that guides them through what they need to do. So whether that's using the work plans feature within Salesforce Field Service that can give them step-by-step instructions, or whether that's a Q&A type of form within the mobile application that kind of guides them through filling in the form. It definitely helps that kind of user adoption on the technician side, giving that guidance and them not having to kind of figure out all the different things they need to input.
Thank you, Naeem.
Thank you, Naeem. I think anyways, we're running at the end of our hour here, so we'll let our participants go. I just want to thank Steve Smith from Salesforce for being here today with us. I want to thank our Diabsolut Professional Services and Stephen for doing the demo today. Appreciate everybody's time and thank you for attending our webinar. As we mentioned, our contact info is on our last slide. If you want to put it up, Dominic, for people, you can always reach out to us either through that email, which is diabmarketing@diabsolut.com, or there's also another email that will come through in the confirmation after this webinar. We will be sharing the recording with everyone within the next few days. So thank you again for attending. We appreciate your time.